Hi everybody, my name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, for each of us walking this planet and doing what we do, it seems like in every day there's just so much going on, there's so much to do, there's so much busyness, there's so much business, there's so much responsibility, there are so many things that need to get done, that we have to do in order for something else to happen. And yet, really, what does a human being want? What does every human being want, no matter what age or color or sexual preference or religion or from what country? We want to feel love and we want to share it. And that is the common root of all of us here on this planet. And so much of the time, do we do that in our lives? Are our lives full of love? And then the manifestation of it, the sharing of it. And often, I mean, if we answer that question honestly to ourselves, the answer is probably not. That we're too caught up in all the things that we have to do. We're too caught up in being what we think a human being is. But really, if we could simplify our needs into feeling love and sharing it, it would be a big step for us all. I mean, does anyone out there really think they want to be a Buddhist or a Christian or a Frenchman or an American or a Greek or gay or heterosexual? I mean, we are all those different things. But is that in our heart what we really want to attain in this human life, as long as we're given the glory of this human life? Is that where the joy of this human life comes from? And all those, certainly all the spiritual paths and all the religions throughout history, their intent is to lead us into that love, that universal love that's called God, that truth, that transcendental experience. And that's what we want. And the opportunity is there for us to have that experience. Throughout history, teachers have come, people who've had that experience have come and said, you can have that experience. You are the light of the world, as am I. And that there is a way to know that love. And then once you know that love, the only experience you want is to share it. And no matter what other things you might be, male, female, whatever country you're from, whatever religion you think you are, there's something deeper and more, something beyond that, of which we are all one. And the opportunity is now to do that. It's time for return to that love, that simple love. That's beyond the love of family, that's beyond the love of country, that's beyond the love of those that seem like us, but to recognize and experience that love of all, the love of the one. With all the other traumas and turbulences going on in the world, and God knows there are traumas and turbulences, and wars and hatreds and long-standing hatreds, there's an opportunity for that love. And that's really what we want, is to feel love and share it. So tonight we have somebody whose life, through her intent, through the good fortune and the way people would look at it in some ways, the misfortune of her life, which has turned into the fortune of her life, knows that experience of love and wants to share it. Jo Dunning is an amazing spiritual teacher. She's a healer. She's clairvoyant, she's clairaudient, she's clairsentient. I mean, when I say those things that are real, I always start to say clair de lune, whatever that means, I don't know, but tremendously gifted. She's able to see into others' physical bodies. She's able to expand consciousness in others. And she will tell you, and she goes out all over the world doing workshops and teachings, that everyone could have that experience. And more important than those individual gifts of those, what we would call amazements, what we would call miracles, is the gift of her love. which she knows is the root of all that. And that's the process we go through to experience that love. Sometimes we get one, sometimes we get another of those gifts, but the experience is of that connectedness, of that love. And we also have, Joe's brought with us a beautiful mudra meditation video called The Dance of Life. That is just a wonderful, beautiful video. And we'll give a feeling before Joe gets out on the set what Joe is like and what her message is and what her vibration is. So for all of us, isn't it time we return to love? And whatever things are preventing us from doing that, isn't it enough already? Really? I mean, haven't we seen what happens when love isn't our central experience? Look at the horror of it. Look at the horror of what exists on earth in some places, in some hearts, in all our hearts to some extent probably. Look what we do to the dolphins and the whales and the oceans and the environment and the trees. Do we experience that we are one with them, that they are what we are, that they are part of that love? But we can. And in that we can live and collaborate and be creative together and enjoy the bounty of this extraordinary gift on this planet Earth that we've been given. And really that's what we want. So as we normally do, please join me in a short meditation, and then we're going to have the mudra video, and then Joe will be on the set. It's going to be an extraordinary show. Relax, settle in. If you don't know how to do a meditation, just settle in, whatever you want to do. Just relax, and there's an extraordinary opportunity coming up in the next 55 minutes or so. So please join me in a meditation if you know one. Hi. So we're going to start tonight's show with a mudra meditation video. Joe Dunning has put it together, and it's called The Dance of Life.
Joe Dunning is a most unusual spiritual teacher, walking the earth as one of us, while embodying a great presence which is able to heal, expand, and assist each of us into becoming the powerful being she sees dwelling within. She developed her gifts after discovering a seldom used yet highly accelerated path into the inner kingdom and spiritual awakening. She now travels the earth sharing the wisdom of her path, her healing and initiations. What you are about to see is an ancient form of prayer shown to Joe through her guidance. This prayer uses the combined focus of the body, mind, and being to provide healing, balance, and expansion of consciousness. This powerful flow of prayer is a blend of many spiritual disciplines, creating a mudra meditation called the Dance of Life. The sacred hand positions of these ancient mudras connect directly into the divine energy of creation. Watch now as Joe Dunning performs the Dance of Life Mudra Meditation.
So welcome, we're on the set with Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Alan.
So in that video, the narrators talked about you go around and show people the wisdom of your path. What is the wisdom of your path?
Well, you know, what I've discovered is that inside of each of us there is this wonderful enlightened being just waiting to pop out. And what we seem to do is wrap that being in the personality and kind of hide it. So the wisdom of my path has to do with how do we let the baggage go, the beliefs go, the things that are in the way of becoming all the time that ongoing, spontaneous, joy-filled, happy enlightenment that dwells inside of us.
What does prevent it?
You know, I think it starts probably when we're very young, in our being cultured into what we need to do to be socially appropriate. So we're little tiny things, we're 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and each time we're told that we are doing something that isn't exactly right. So each time we aren't loved exactly as we are, I think we begin to cover up that spontaneous part of ourselves. And once we begin to start covering it, then we get approval from those around us. So we're no longer...
So we're kind of faking it. We're faking...
We're molding ourselves. We're
right?
molding ourselves to fit into the society that we live in. We're molding ourselves. And we see that joyfulness in a lot of kids. I mean, we can still see kids at 6 and 7 and 8 and 10 even that still have that aliveness.
That childlike quality, because they're children.
That's right.
We end up losing it, and we got to come back to it.
That's right. Unless you become like children. So we need to become again like that child, which is innocent and playful and doesn't seem to judge much or have many opinions or beliefs that get in the way of that spontaneous flow.
And would you say that almost everyone on the planet has some form of that when they start out, or at least when they have it, they have that childlike quality, and then they grow up and they assimilate into the society, and then the walls are up and they...
I think so. I mean, I certainly see it in all the babies. Look in their eyes, you know, to see the aliveness there. But some children much sooner, some children a little longer, it begins to get covered over from the environment, probably at first primarily environment, but also it may also be nutrition and other kinds of things that can begin to dim that life force. But I believe it's there in all of us, and I also believe that all of the gifts, all the spiritual gifts, are there in all of us, all the time, and we're just in the process of uncovering them, beginning to let them come forward more and more.
Why don't you tell a little bit about your story? I mean, you had a defining moment, but even before that, you were on the spiritual path,
Right.
say, and you were going along and you were thinking had achieved something. Why don't you talk about that? We talked about
Well, I'll start a little bit with my background.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, and I was very happy being raised Catholic. It was just fine for me and who I was, and the parents that I had were very loving. So I had this sort of traditional Christian upbringing until I was about 25. And at about 25, I opened a book by Ruth Montgomery called A Search for the Truth. And I had never read anything metaphysical or mystical or anything. And it was like something inside of me lit
just
up.
a light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I just had this knowing that there was this whole candy store that was there to be played in that I had never heard of. And so I began to go to workshops and study healing and pyramids and crystals and all kinds of stuff in my 20s and 30s, just fascinated by it. And I want you to know I was terrible at it. I mean, so I would hold a crystal and nothing would happen, and I would put my hands on somebody and try to channel energy and nothing would happen. You know,
Except they got a rash once.
So it's not that I had a natural knack for it all the way along, but I certainly had an interest.
Right.
And then I became very interested in traditional mysticism, which means a mystic is someone who's really interested in having their own personal experience with God and of God, so that the mystic steps aside from religion, although most religions have mystics in them. But the mystic really is seeking that personal experience with God, that connection, the oneness, the joy, the ongoing knowing of the presence. So I began a discipline called Practicing the Presence, or the prayer of the heart. And it's a repetition of a Christian prayer, and you say it with each inhale and each exhale with the attention focused in the heart. Well, probably the first 2 years of this practice was an internal war, because my mind wanted to be out thinking and planning in the world and thinking about what I'd have for dinner or the phone conversation I just had. And the practice said, no, the attention goes in the heart. So there was this struggle going on. But after about 2 years, I think, I woke up one night in the middle of the night and I didn't have to remember to start saying the prayer. The prayer was just going inside of me all the time. I didn't have to do anything anymore, which means my mind had gotten quiet. Once that happened, I began to notice that my heart was opening. I mean, really opening in ways that I had never experienced before. And so I had an ongoing awareness of being love-filled most of the time. And if I didn't experience it in a moment, I could stop and refocus and it would be there. I didn't know what a precious gift that was. I mean, I just figured it happened with everybody. Perhaps it does, but I look at it as a very precious gift.
Generally
right now.
not consciously. Not
Yeah.
most people, I would say.
So I decided that if the heart being opened is wonderful, then there must be something even more wonderful beyond it. And I made a covenant with God on November 11th of 1986. I didn't know anything about numerology. I didn't know it was 11/11. Mm-hmm. And about 7 or 8 weeks later, my prayers were answered. And my request was, go ahead, do whatever's necessary to move me into the next levels of awakening, that I'm ready, I want it. And the reason I felt comfortable asking that was that I thought this open heart could endure anything, and that it would always be available to me. And that amount of love inside, it wouldn't matter what was happening in the world around me. And that's true. I mean, that was true as my heart was open. But the answer to my prayers came in a form I didn't anticipate at all, as they usually do. And there was a home invasion. And I was living at the time with a minister, a unity minister actually. And she was my spiritual teacher and dear friend. And someone invaded our home and shot both of us. And she died instantly and I recovered. So immediately my life was upside down. The beliefs that I had, that I knew about, all the reading I'd done and studying I'd done, I really thought I had the answers to life. I mean, people could ask me questions before this event happened and I could rattle off an answer, and I thought it was the answer. And it was because I'd read it someplace in a book. And with the shooting that took place, I felt like none of that made sense anymore. None of it. That it was all just out of a book. I hadn't experienced it. I hadn't lived it. I didn't even know if the person who wrote it had experienced it or lived it. And what
It didn't matter. All that mattered for you was that you experienced it.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
It's up to them what you know.
And so I realized that for me to survive this event and to come out a happy individual again, which was my goal, to open and bloom more, that I would have to begin to go inside and find my own answers. And so what I began to do was, I had two beliefs left. One was that everything comes from as a gift from God, and I don't know why that belief stayed. That would seem like one that go out the window fast, but that's non-duality. So I knew this was a gift, and it was just up to me to hang in with it until I could turn it into the blessing that was intended.
So you could really recognize it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other belief was that inside of each of us, inside you, inside me, inside everybody, there is a part of us that is a guidance system, and it knows exactly what to do moment by moment to take us from where we are to where we'd like to be. So my first goal was to find that guidance system, and it probably took me 3 or 4 months, maybe longer, to find what I believed was the guidance system, test it, and then begin to follow it. And so that was really the beginning of my intense spiritual delving, I would say. And my goal was only to take care of myself, to heal myself so that I could have a happy life. And in the process, I learned how to heal myself. I learned how the energy went through my body. I learned about emotions. I learned about my mind. I learned how the mind created responses in the body. And so bit by bit, I was being instructed on how all of us work. I mean, we're all the same. Right. So I was being instructed in that, on a very personal level. And over the next months and then years, this guidance system became my only way of resolving my own answers to what do I do now, where do I go, what do I eat.
So you left reason behind.
Completely.
Right.
Yeah. And much of what I was doing was not, it wouldn't make sense to anybody. It would not make sense.
And would you say it was like an inner experience of harmony? Or would you say it was something more specific than that?
The guidance system? The guidance system is actually very easy, and whenever I've done it with a group, it seems like almost everyone in the group can find it right away. And the guidance system for me is a feeling right in my center of my chest, my heart area. And for me, when the answer is yes, move forward, it's a warmth and an opening. And for when it's no, it's off, don't do that, don't go there, don't say that, it's a closing, a tightness. And some people, you might be able to remember when you were a kid and you were going to tell a lie or you were going to steal a cookie or something you shouldn't do. There was kind of this feeling that you should not have.
And but in order to have that experience, you have to be there and you have to be in that moment. So you can't have momentum going because then it's too fast to experience it. So you have to be slow in that sense. You have to be there.
You have to be there, yes. And you have to...
Your consciousness has to be with that experience.
Yes. And you also need to reach sort of a neutral place about outcome. So if you want to be able to get a clear answer here, I have to set aside my preference of outcome. Because if I have a preference of outcome, then it's very hard to read what it is.
If that machine that's making the preference of outcome isn't working, then you wouldn't have one, right?
Correct.
So that's to stop the world, to be in, be here now. That's the key, is to stop the tool that creates the division, that creates the good and the bad and all that.
But I think that mechanism is in us right now. It's in you and me and everyone right now.
It's
without
the life force. In a
without
sense.
any training, without any meditating, without any stopping anything. I think it's been whispering to us. I think it's the still small voice that's whispering to us since we were born. I think with the first breath, and I think it continues into the last breath. And it is telling us through our physical form, our physical body, yes and no, yes and no, yes and no. We talk about stress, we talk about tension. Well, that's when it's gotten so massive that we aren't even noticing the little tiny bit in our heart anymore. It's gone through our whole body. Well, for me, as I began to tune into this place, what I found was that the sensations of yes and the sensation of no went through my whole body. And it now is a body response. If I start to go into a room that's not my place to be right then, I feel a pressure on my body, and I just know this isn't the place for me right now. And I have no idea why. I don't even
completely
try.
Unreasonable.
Completely.
Yeah, I understand.
But the mind wants to go,
Yeah.
oh, I know, it's
Yeah,
because
right.
so-and-so
It wants to
is
give
there.
an explanation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you had that experience where you did that prayer for a long time. At some point I realized that for me, it was almost like a spiritual exercise. I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but no thought was worth thinking.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what I mean? So every time I go
Yes.
there, I just go back into meditation. And that did the same effect, that it stopped that process.
Yes. It will.
And that's the process where you have identity, where you have division, where you have religion, where you have,
That's
all
right.
the things that we have that are separate, even separate bodies.
That's right. That's right. And as the mind becomes more quiet, then we can begin to experience all these other elements. And yet some people think they need to sit and meditate a certain number of hours a day or minutes a week or whatever. And I found that for me, that's not my way. And my way is to find a way to be in meditation or connected with guidance or with spirit, ongoing, all the time, so that I don't need to stop and go meditate to figure something out.
Would you say well, I mean, I know there are a lot of processes, but I mean, it seems to me to slow that, I mean, there's so much momentum of the mind, or however you would describe it, moving. How do you get to where you hear the small voice and trust it? I mean, you have to start leaning on the cane.
Yes.
So how do you see that happening? I mean, I think that's why a lot of spiritual paths have quiet time, have meditation, because something has to happen that silence can guide you. But if there's too much chatter, you won't hear it.
What I'm finding is that the mind is in charge of our growth and development through the first three chakras. And so if we're developing still in the first chakra, survival, second chakra of creating ourself and who we are, and third chakra of presenting ourselves into the world, then the mind will have a very active role. And actually the heart is telling the mind what to do, but the mind appears to be in charge. But then we reach this point right under the diaphragm, which is where we go through the dark night of the soul. And in that point, that's where the transition takes, and the mind starts to let go of the control, and we think we're losing our mind, we think we're going to be homeless, we'll never have a job again.
Yeah, we'll be by the tree, 80 years old, no one will love us, no teeth,
yes.
truly.
Yes,
It's brutal, isn't it?
Yeah, and we all, if we're lucky, we all hit that place. Right. Because that means we've completed first chakra, second chakra, third chakra learning. We're ready to step beyond the mind, and we're going into the intuitive guidance system, or the heart. And that's when we go through a little tiny opening in the diaphragm and up into the heart center. And the heart center, I love the name of your program, because there are points in the physical body that blend heaven and earth. And the heart is the point. There are 2 points I'm aware of. One is the heart and one is the pineal pituitary. And the heart blends the energies from the heaven and the energies from the earth in our physical form. And so then we carry them forth through the emotions of love, and we manifest through the heart center, meaning the emotions, here in this plane. And I was talking to someone and explaining the colors of the chakras, and the color of the third chakra is yellow, and the color of the throat chakra is blue. And we remember from when we were coloring in kindergarten, when the blue sky ran over the yellow sun, we got a green line across it. So when you mix yellow and blue, you're going to end up with green, and that's the color of the heart chakra, because it blends the energies of the earth and the energies of the heavens. And that's what keeps us alive and anchored here, alive with our spiritual energy, anchored with our earth energy. Then the pineal and the pituitary work together harmoniously. They have a marriage at one point. I call it marriage of the pineal and pituitary. And the pineal gland is bringing in the energies through the crown chakra and aiming that energy back into the sacred chambers of the brain. And there are ways to activate the pineal gland so that if that is something the person really wants to accomplish this lifetime, it's possible to go and activate the pineal gland so it does that. And once the pineal gland has been activated, then there's another point where it joins with the pituitary. So the pituitary is carrying all of this energy now through the physical form, and the physical form is starting to become a higher frequency, higher vibrational form then, so through the pituitary and the work of the hormonal systems. It's just fascinating. I mean, once we can start going inside the body and notice what's going on and pay attention to the energies, there's a whole course in what I call esoteric anatomy. And it's how does it all work beyond the physical? What's the purpose of all of it? It's fascinating stuff.
And then beyond that, there's like all the atoms. I mean, you know what I mean? At each level, there's...
Yes, and Einstein, dear great Einstein, talked about levitation. Only he didn't call it levitation. He said that as the spin of the electron increases, the faster the little electron in each of our cells spins faster, the more it negates the forces of gravity. This is Einstein. Well, what he's saying is that as we raise our vibration, those little electrons spin faster, and therefore we levitate, or we become light. And that's how levitation happens, is that we get our electrons moving really rapidly.
So in this process, then you found yourself being given or experiencing these ways of healing, these ways of seeing?
It was accidental at first, probably 6 or 8 months after the home invasion. I was in Hawaii for a little while, and a week or two, and I had a dream that I was doing some healing work. Now that's an unusual dream for me, but when I woke up from the dream, my hands were still on fire from the dream where I was doing healing work. And so I thought, well, there's no point in wasting this energy, and I set my hand on my stomach. I thought I will send the energy to myself. Well, when I woke up in the morning, I saw that I had a handprint burned on my abdomen because there was so much energy coming through that it had burned the skin. Although it's not painful, it just changes the color. So it stayed a brilliant lobster red like a sunburn for a few days, and then became a dark tan, just like a sunburn would.
And a handprint.
A handprint. Yeah, I even took pictures of it. I thought, this is so weird, you know. So that was the first sign that something was starting to happen. And then a few months after that, I had a small gathering of friends in my home, and I went up behind one of the women and just put my hand around her and gave her a little hug and said, "Hi, it's good to see you." And my hands happened to be on her abdomen. And as I put my hands there, there was this loud ripping noise. Like if you had a long strip of Velcro and you pulled it apart, it would make that kind of a ripping noise. Well, I mean, I jumped back and she jumped back, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, what happened?" And I said, "I have no idea." She said, "You know, the pain in my side just stopped." And I didn't know anything about a pain in her side, and I said, "Tell me about it." And she said, "Well, I had my appendix out 4 or 5 years ago, and I have severe adhesions, and I'm in constant pain." Well, the sound that we both heard was all those little cells popping apart. And
that was happening as you would describe it, because of a certain energy that was going through you.
It was just happening spontaneously.
So you had no intention, you had no...
I had nothing, zero. I was still very much focused on how do I heal myself. This is only a year since the event happened. And for anyone that's been through major traumas, we know that it's a number of years to begin to heal and reintegrate. So I didn't have any focus on anything except taking care of myself. But I realized that with the handprint being burned, with this
something was happening,
that whatever I was doing was working. You know, something was beginning to switch. And then a period of time after that, a friend came to me and said, "I hear strange things happen around you. You know, would you help me with my back?" And I really didn't particularly want to do any healing work. I mean, I didn't know how to do it, didn't have any ideas. So I just kind of sat and stared at her. She said, I really don't want you to touch me. I hurt too much." So I just sat and stared, and all of a sudden I realized I was seeing inside her body.
Wow.
And I could see her spinal column where she'd been injured in an auto accident. And there was cracks in a couple of the vertebrae, and a little chip had floated off to the side.
Can you see the places, would you vibrationally know the places where there was disharmony?
In this particular instance, I was actually seeing it just like you'd see an X-ray, only it wasn't black and white. It was more like looking at flesh color. And at other times when I work with people, I'll see the energy as it's blocked someplace. Sometimes I actually see what's going on inside. I can see if there's something twisted or...
Now, do you have to? If you looked at the crew, God forbid, would you have to have that intention, or would it just be some... You would have to have that
I
intention.
choose that I would have that intention because I have some spiritual guidelines about integrity, and one is you don't go snooping.
In someone's body.
No, I mean,
Their pocket's
Yeah.
fine, body you
yeah,
can.
you just,
Their
I mean,
kidney, you don't want to look at their kidney.
you don't check on their thoughts, you don't check on their body, you don't do any of that unless, it's a situation where I'm invited by them consciously. So my
Would
guideline
there be
is,
a certain level of disharmony that would just draw your attention? In other words, like if they're in the physical realm, if there was a loud noise over there, we might look
Yeah.
over there. And would there, if someone came in a room that was,
yes,
say,
occasionally.
deranged or something,
Yes,
Would
occasionally.
you go, whoa,
Yes.
yeah, it's time for me to...
Yes. Yeah, that kind of that's a feel more off the energy field just
Right.
coming at me than checking out the body. So
Right.
I don't go to check anything out, but occasionally something will just jump at me.
right,
As it would anybody.
anybody.
I may be a little more sensitive.
sensitive than that.
Yeah, but so this scene inside the body began to develop at that point, and the person I described I was seeing in her body, and I thought that was just the most amazing thing I'd ever heard of, and she wanted me to do something. Well, okay, you can see. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
What
And-
good is that to
Yeah, right. I was very satisfied. So I just imagined, and so I've now learned a lot about imagination. I imagined my fingers were little ray guns, and I was just putting those little bone chips back in place and building a little support system.
And you could see it happening?
Well, let's see now. Could I see that happening? I could see it in my inner vision, but I wouldn't see it the same way I was seeing the bone, the
Okay,
cracks
so
in the
you
bone.
wouldn't see the bone healing. in
At that point, I wasn't looking at the bone. I was looking at the little bars I was building
I
on the
see.
supports
Okay.
on each side. But at the end of the session, the pain was gone. And she'd been in the auto accident, I think, 3 years earlier. And it was gone. That was the
So
end
is there
of it.
anything you can't fix?
Well, I'm sure that there is. And there are often...
But you haven't come close yet. Oh my God, in 10 years, this is a miracle.
Well, it's not that it can't be fixed, because anything that we'd like to have different in our life can be different. Is the person in a place that they would like to have that kind of change take place in their life? Because often that means letting go of a belief or letting go of an old resentment.
An old resentment.
An
but
old
it could also
resentment.
be a belief that that's not possible and only Jesus could do it, or only...
No, it's more a belief like I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm bad, I have something wrong with me. It's those kind of beliefs. It's not...
That I should have a bone spur in my back, or bad things should happen to me. I mean, is
Some
that
people have
conscious?
that belief. Yes, some people have that. I'm a bad person and I deserve this.
This pain is for me because I'm so bad.
Or I'm suffering so I'll have a better place in heaven. That's
I
a
love
very
that.
Catholic
I
one.
love that.
Yeah,
great.
Let's go do some penance here and get farther into heaven. So it's mostly that.
I mean, would
a
they?
belief.
Okay, now you're looking at this person, you're seeing that, and you're moving through what the process of healing. I mean, would they block it, or would you just not do it, or would they say, "No, I don't want you to fix it. I'm evil and I don't deserve for you to heal it," or wouldn't they? Or they wouldn't be in front of you? How would that work?
Well, in one case, they wouldn't be drawn there in the first place. But sometimes they just aren't ready to let it go, and I can watch the energy shift and move it back into place, and then as soon as I stop,
It'll
they'll
kick
put
it out.
it back. And when that happens, I'll say, let's talk a little bit. How do you feel about this? Do you have any situations in your life that are bothering you? And if we can go in and remove the baggage, the old baggage that they're carrying, which can also be done energetically. If there's traumas that we've been through in our youth or recently even, it's possible to go in and clear that out of the energy field.
You can see that too. So you can see like past problems or past lives where they've
What
had-
I generally see is energy. But I would have to be invited to check that. I wouldn't just go and look at it. I would have to be invited. Would you check and see if I have such and such going on? Or I have these feelings going on inside of me. What can we do to shift them? So I tend to take the lead from the person that's there with me, so that it's very not invasive, because frequently someone will be working with me and say, for example, they have an addiction of some kind. That's often obvious on an energy level. That's something that can be told, but if they don't want to address that, then I would never go there. I would never mention it or say anything.
You would never, and how can you tell that they didn't want to address it?
I might say, do you feel like you have anything in your life that's difficult to manage? Do you have any particular drugs or alcohol, something that's hard for you?
No.
You know, so I might mention it as an aside. You know, is there anything that you can think of? And if they aren't willing to say, yeah, I think I drink too much, or yeah, you know, then I don't go there, because they're not ready, and it's not my place to tell them what they should work on, you know, unless they come to me and say, I want you to be my trainer, spiritual coach. Then I can say, okay, let's address these issues. We can sit down and take a look at it.
And do people do that? I mean, people come to you and say...
I have a spiritual coaching program, and so people sign up, and we do it by teleconference sometimes. Sometimes they'll come for an intensive for a day and we'll work. Sometimes they'll come to a training workshop where I'm teaching something, and they'll want to be trained, and we have to do some clearing work before they're ready to start being able to do energy work. Yeah. Isn't it amazing stuff?
It is amazing.
I mean, but the thing is, it's amazing that everybody has these abilities. I mean, I'm not unique. I may be unusual in that most people don't use these things, so they're unused, but not unusual. Everyone has it. Everybody has it. Everybody got all the gifts. And some people come and say, you know, oh, I just wish I could be a healer, or I wish I could be a reader or something. And if that's what they want, they have those gifts. I mean, it's there in everyone. No one got shorted. Everyone is loved.
Everyone here is loved by however they would look at the Creator.
Yeah, everyone is loved equally and magnificently. Everybody. So,
how did you think? How did it unfold in this particular experiment or this Earth plane that we didn't remember that is so prevalent as a forgetting?
You know, I think it must have been going on for lifetimes and lifetimes.
I mean, could it be that it was set up that we would come in infinite, you know, in separate bodies and forget, and what the process would be? Almost like, I mean, I call it an experiment.
Yeah.
It seems to me it's, you know, the best of us over history never had it, you know, never knew it that well. Even the Jesus and Christians and the Buddhas. You know what I mean? So it had to be pretty difficult here.
Yeah.
To understand that. At least it's at different times.
Well, I think what my belief is, and I teach only from my own experience, so you may ask a question about an area that I just don't have experience, and all I can say is I don't know. You know, I just haven't gone into that area. But I really wanted to know about how the world started. I really wanted to know that, and so I asked to be shown.
Okay.
And
start there.
What I was shown was this pulsing mass of energy that I would just call formless, and therefore I would call it God. And it was pulsing and pulsing, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller, and really, really dense. I mean, really, just tremendous amount of energy packed in a little tiny space. And then it went plooey, huge, huge.
Was there a consciousness that you would call a consciousness in that?
Yes, I would call that God.
Okay, so there was a consciousness.
It was self-aware.
And it had an intention to
And it had an intention. And it had an intention, and it was pulling itself in to explode into a gazillion pieces. And all of those pieces, what I saw was all of those pieces became everything that is. Became you, me, flowers, trees, earth, planets, sky, stars, everything. So that when we say God is everywhere, that's the truth. When we say you are God, that's the truth, because everything, there isn't anything that isn't that, which means there's no bad guy. Everything is God. And what I saw happening was, once this had exploded into all these pieces, little tiny specks of those pieces began to light up. And what I watched happen was, it would be like a person in India becoming enlightened, and a person in the United States becoming enlightened, more and more and more and more. And that's...
Why did one light and one not?
Because it had been doing whatever it needed to do to remember that it was God. When it lighted, when it remembered it was God, it lighted.
One not. See, I never can understand why one.
Boy, I wish I'd asked that question then.
Yeah, next time you do
why
it.
that one and not that one?
Right.
Sure.
And
I don't know.
It's an interesting, why one person ended up with bad karma.
Yeah.
Starting off from that.
Yeah.
It's just, see, to me, that's why it has to be some experiment that it was going to be set up that way. that we were. It wasn't that somebody did good and somebody didn't do good.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because that was. It just was.
Well, what I saw happening was these little specks all started lighting up, and the intention was the God intention was that each speck would remember that it was God, and as we all remember that we're God, then this bigger thing was all lighted, and it contracted back down again, and then exploded even bigger. So it was like
the in-breath and out-breath.
Yeah, and also the expansion and creation of a bigger and bigger divine force. Now that was how it was shown to me, and that's how I understand it right now, which also really made it hard for me for a little while, because it meant that my young childhood belief and later metaphysical belief about something out there that could help me here was not accurate.
It's accurate when there's division.
Well,
once there's no division, then there's nothing to ask for. Nobody's asking any, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But
so,
that's, you know,
so
when we go back and forth between that, there is something. Because we're separate from other things.
Yes, we are separate from other things.
But we don't have to be.
But yes, we don't have to be.
Right.
And I kept thinking that there was still this one unit of pulsing force in the sky someplace, that all I had to do was say the right prayer or be good enough or meditate right, same as I did when I was a kid. I just put it into different words. And we talk about now, you know, universal laws of things. So I'm beginning to understand that there is just divinity everywhere, and that's all we need to be aware of. And as we become more and more aware of that, we see more and more divinity, and we become more and more divine. So that means we're letting go of our "you done it to me" stories. I call it the because my such and such. So we're letting go of those. We have to.
Yeah, I call it rubbing up against the infinite. You become, you know, you recognize that you're,
right.
You know, instead of all the separate things and all male, female, young, old, you experience somehow, by some way.
That's right. That's right.
That you're the infinite.
And I think part of that,
momentum builds up, and then
part of that is a maturational process, because we go through a spiritual developmental process, the same as we go through one in the physical body, the same as we go through one in our schooling system.
But do you think it's you wouldn't say it's in linear? It's time linear, would you?
It is, well, time doesn't exist there, but it has a progression to it. And the progression may move this way. You know, it goes forward a little bit, back a little bit. A few pieces get this far along, some are still here. But the movement, as I know to call it, is victim, victor, vehicle. And we start off in the first two chakras at the victim stage, meaning there is a real God out there, there's a real heaven and hell. We are sort of helpless to do anything, and at some point someone will come and rescue us. Now, we all have aspects of ourselves that still go to that place once in a while.
Right.
But some people live in that place. And then as we move into the third chakra, we become very self-aware. We know our own boundaries. We know who we are. We know my stuff and your stuff. We know about creating our own reality. We know the laws of karma. Then we're in the third chakra, and we're moving very rapidly spiritually. And then we go through that passage I mentioned and move up into the heart chakra, which is the birth canal. That's the birth canal. The heart chakra is the birth canal between the earthly energies, the mental, and the heavenly energies from here up. So we get birthed in this crossover point here at the center of our heart. And that's where the real work begins. We think that the struggle is here at the dark night, where we're trying to figure out, do I lose my mind or not? But the struggle is really when we get into the heart center and we start to be stripped of our personality, and our ego is no longer a personal ego, and our will is no longer a personal will. And that's where the real work gets done. And
if we're in that place where the little voice is talking, thy will be done, right?
Yes.
I mean, so the only place ego and separation exist is in this organ, right? I mean, so if
Yes.
we're here,
yes,
then there's only one will.
yes,
And it's actually just love in motion. It isn't even a will.
right.
There isn't even, there's an intention. Like you had an intention to get on the plane, but there were a lot of breaths between the time you got up this morning and you would have gone with it.
Yes.
I mean, how could you have done otherwise? Right? I mean, wouldn't you say that?
Yes, and I especially like your point that what's going on in the mind is creating what's happening. It creates the separation. And if we realized how powerful our mind is, we would watch our thoughts very carefully, because they have very powerful creative forces. But we don't realize it. Unfortunately, we have enough conflicting thoughts that they tend to cancel each other out. But I know most people certainly would not want to have every thought they have manifest.
Dylan said, if my thought streams could be seen, they put my head in the guillotine.
Uh-huh. Right. I mean, how many times do we worry that someone we love is in an auto accident, you know, or just little things like that, and we're going, oh my goodness, these are not just malintended thoughts, but just our worries, our thoughtful worries. We certainly aren't in a place that we'd like
Or
to be
we're not in the
manifesting.
moment. I mean, it's like people say, I miss you already, but I'm right here. You know,
Right,
why? How
right.
does that work? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's only some, you know, feeding the illusion again and
Yes.
believing it.
Yes, but that's what the mind does, and that's its role, and it's probably our greatest friend and our greatest ally in our spiritual growth. Most people think the mind is the enemy, but it really isn't. It's the one that tests our strength.
Well, it's what's in control. It's like a computer can be helpful, but not if it's running berserk and spreading viruses all over.
Right, right. So we learn how to use the mind. So the mind running us, we learn how to direct the mind and use it that way. And then we've got a great ally, because the mind actually can lead us into the depths of hell, which we've all experienced with our thoughts, and we go on, and all of a sudden we're just terribly upset. Or it can walk us right in through the gates of heaven.
The tricky thing is once you have the machine on, it's hard to control. So, I mean, that's why a lot of spiritual paths say, slow that machine down. You're not going to be able to control it. You know, you got to have a lot of momentum going up with that small voice before you're going to control that massive machine.
Well, most of us have it running that way. In fact, I remember one point a number of years ago where I had been through this difficult situation, and my mind was just going forever. And I thought, my mind is making me crazy.
Absolutely.
It's like going. I said, I have to stop my mind, or I have to cut my head off, or I have to do something to stop it. And I was desperate. I mean, I was desperate to stop it. And I thought, I'll try anything. And all of a sudden, I thought, well, why don't I focus my mind in a different way? And I learned how to do a temporary energetic lobotomy. And I'll share it with you because it's really helpful when your mind's going crazy.
People suggest I actually get a lobotomy, so
well,
this could be a great benefit.
There's a point at the top of each eyebrow. You know, each of us have an eyebrow, and it has a high point on it. Well, if you just imagine that those 2 points are being pulled apart, being pulled this way, stretched farther apart, what you'll find is when you imagine that, your mind stops thinking other than in the present. So right now, my mind, I'm doing that with my mind, and I'm here, and words are coming out of my mouth, and I'm never sure what's going to be the next word, right? Because I'm cut off energetically from here up, and all that's functioning are the lower level portions. Now, obviously, other levels are functioning because I'm talking and I'm thinking, but it doesn't have any ability to go wandering any place. And that's what I discovered, was those 2 points, and they got me through. They got me through a real hard time. Now I found another point, and it puts you...
Tell us that.
Okay. This is from one of the workshops, but I'll give you a piece of it anyway. Ooh, secret.
A mystery school here.
Yes, it is. So there is a point that will silence the mind and put you into a state of being instantly. And it is under the bone, right at the top of the head, under the bone. So you're not on top of the head, you're not in the bone, you are right on the underside of the bone. You're sitting right here on the bone. And if you put your attention there, oh, it's so nice. Everything goes quiet. Can you feel it?
I can, but let me ask you something. If you put your attention on anything like breath or anything like that, won't it stop? I mean, isn't the problem with mind is that it's, you know, it doesn't have a focal point? I mean, that's why a lot of meditations are breath meditations, a mantra meditation. You know, anything that takes all the ripples and kind of slows them down. I mean, so is it the focus on that or the internal thing, or is it just focus on anything except your own stupidity?
Well, I've experimented quite a bit.
And you find those to be...
And I found those 2 points, for me, seem to be highly effective. And when I've shared it with groups, especially this point here, no, these 2 also, others seem to find that it's highly effective. Now, I haven't asked the group to go to their another point on their body and hold their attention there to kind of compare it as an experiment. I haven't asked that, but I found that those 2 points seem to really do something.
Wow. So I think there's a lot been said, but I think we're coming to the end of another show. And I hope you had the experience that I had. And there's a lot here. So if you want any information about Joe, the workshops, the healings, call me, Alan, 805-687-2053. 805-687-2053. Good night. God bless you. We love you. Come again. Good night.